All right, so today we're diving into a true classic.
Oh, yeah.
One that sold over 30 million copies,
Mhm.
and people are still reading it almost a century later.
Wow.
Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
A classic for sure.
And for this deep dive, we've got an audiobook excerpt.
Okay.
And we're going to try to pull out those golden nuggets of wisdom
Sounds good.
that can help all of us build stronger relationships and become more influential.
I like it.
So,
Yeah, this book,
thanks, fans.
it's fascinating how this book published in 1936
Yeah.
still holds up in our modern world, you know?
Right.
Carnegie, he tapped into something timeless about human nature, I think.
Absolutely.
Our desire to connect and just our need to feel valued.
For sure. And he backs it all up with these incredible stories and examples.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Which we'll get to.
Looking forward to it.
But first, let's talk about one of the most fundamental principles that he talks about: appreciation and encouragement.
Okay.
So Carnegie tells a story about Charles Schwab. And, he was a leader who was renowned for inspiring his team.
Right.
Schwab believed that focusing on people's strengths and praising their achievements was way more effective
For sure.
than dwelling on their shortcomings.
Right.
He even said, and I quote, "I am anxious to praise, but loath to find fault." It's a powerful mindset shift.
Totally.
When someone focuses on what you do well,
Yeah.
it makes you want to do even better.
Right? Absolutely.
It fuels your motivation to build your confidence.
Yeah, and it's not just Schwab.
Okay.
Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate,
Uh-huh.
was so passionate about the power of praise that he literally had it inscribed on his tombstone.
Wow.
He wanted to be remembered for surrounding himself with people more talented than himself.
It's almost like he was saying, I succeeded because I knew how to recognize and appreciate talent in others.
Exactly.
And then there's John D. Rockefeller,
Yeah.
who even after $1 million loss,
Oh, wow.
still found something to commend in his team.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, that speaks volumes about his leadership style.
Yeah.
Imagine facing a major setback.
Right.
And instead of assigning blame,
Yeah.
you look for the positives.
Right.
And find something to praise.
That must have been incredibly motivating for his team.
Oh, for sure.
It's a reminder that genuine appreciation, even in the face of adversity, can be a powerful driving force.
Yeah. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about another key principle Carnegie highlights:
Right.
remembering names.
Okay.
He uses Napoleon as an example, a man known for his strategic brilliance.
Right.
Napoleon had a meticulous method for remembering names,
Wow.
focusing on both the visual and auditory impressions,
Okay.
what he called eye impression and ear impression.
So it wasn't just about hearing the name.
Right.
It was about making that conscious effort to connect the name with the person's face.
Exactly.
He even used techniques like writing the name down, visualizing it,
Yeah.
and then destroying the paper to solidify the memory. Talk about commitment.
Yeah, but, Carnegie contrasts Napoleon's meticulous approach with a story that shows how easily this basic courtesy can be overlooked.
Okay.
A department store clerk, through sheer lack of remembering a loyal customer's name, almost drove away valuable business.
Wow.
It highlights the missed opportunity when we fail to make that simple effort.
It's interesting because on the flip side,
Yeah.
Carnegie also talks about a TWA flight attendant, Karen Kirsch,
What?
who received glowing praise just for using passengers' names.
Interesting.
It seems so basic, but it makes a huge difference.
It really does.
Right.
It all comes down to making people feel seen and valued.
Yeah.
When someone remembers your name,
Uh-huh.
it instantly creates a connection.
Right.
Whether you're in a casual setting or a professional one.
Like you're saying, you're important enough for me to remember.
Exactly.
Which brings us to another crucial point:
Okay.
becoming a good listener.
All right.
Carnegie tells a story about a botanist at a dinner party
Uh-huh.
who, despite saying very little, was considered a captivating conversationalist.
Interesting.
And the reason,
Why is that?
he was genuinely interested in what others had to say.
Okay.
He listened attentively,
Yeah.
asked engaging questions,
Mm-hmm.
and encouraged people to talk about themselves.
So it's not about dominating the conversation or
Yep.
trying to impress people with your own knowledge.
Exactly.
It's about shifting the focus outward
Yeah.
and making the other person feel heard and understood.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that everyone has a story to tell
Yeah.
and that we can learn so much by simply listening with genuine interest.
Absolutely.
We were just talking about listening.
Yeah.
It makes me think about how many times we miss out on really connecting with people
Mm-hmm.
because we're so focused on, getting our own point across.
Right.
Carnegie talks a lot about this,
Yeah,
especially in the context of winning people to your way of thinking.
he does.
And he has this really interesting perspective on it. He argues that the best way to win an argument
Mm-hmm.
is to avoid it altogether.
Interesting.
Now, it might sound counterintuitive,
Right.
but how many times has arguing with someone actually changed their mind?
Very rarely.
Almost never, right?
Yeah, it usually just makes people more entrenched in their positions.
Digging their heels.
Yeah.
I think he uses a story from his own life
Oh, really?
where he was totally convinced he knew the source of a Shakespeare quote.
Okay.
And he even brought in an expert to prove his point.
Oh, wow.
But in the end, he realized that, his insistence on being right
Yeah.
just created this awkward situation, and it didn't achieve anything positive.
That's a good point.
It's a great reminder that sometimes preserving the relationship
Uh-huh.
is more important than winning the argument.
Absolutely. And he also stresses the importance of showing respect for other opinions, even when you disagree.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that everyone is entitled to their perspective.
Right.
And, trying to force your views on others will likely backfire.
It's so easy to fall into that trap, though,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
when you feel passionately about something.
It is. It is. And so Carnegie suggests that instead of saying you're wrong,
Okay.
we could try a more collaborative approach, like
Give me an example.
something like, I see things differently, but I could be wrong. Let's look at the facts together.
I like that approach.
Yeah,
That opens the door for a productive conversation
exactly.
instead of just, shutting it down at
Right.
this harsh disagreement.
Yeah. And, this next point really struck me.
Okay.
Carnegie advises admitting your faults quickly and emphatically if you're wrong.
So if you're wrong, just admit it.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, but it can actually disarm the other person
Really?
and make them more receptive to your perspective.
How so?
Well, by acknowledging your mistake, you take away their ammunition
Okay.
and you demonstrate humility.
Makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, and it also shows that you're open to learning and growing, which are qualities that people admire.
So what other strategies does Carnegie suggest for winning people over?
Well, one that stands out is beginning in a friendly way.
Yeah.
It's about setting a positive tone from the start,
Right.
creating a welcoming atmosphere
Yeah.
where people feel safe to share their ideas.
This reminds me of the story he tells about the salesman who spent years trying to sell motors to this company
Okay.
without any success.
Oh, wow.
And he finally landed the deal
How?
when he started by agreeing with the chief engineer's complaint
About what?
about the motors running too hot.
Interesting.
It's a perfect example of finding common ground
Right.
and getting the other person to say yes early on in the conversation.
I like it.
It builds momentum and establishes a collaborative spirit.
It's like you're saying we're on the same team here.
Exactly.
Okay.
Which leads us to another interesting point that he makes.
What's that?
Letting the other person do a great deal of the talking.
Oh, that's a tough one.
It is.
For some people, at least.
It's about being a good listener, right?
Right.
Allowing the other person to fully express themselves
Yeah.
and making them feel heard and understood.
It does build trust.
Absolutely.
And it gives you valuable insights into their perspective.
And he tells this fantastic story about a salesman who lost his voice
Oh, wow.
and was forced to let the client do most of the talking.
Okay.
Much to his surprise, he ended up with the biggest order of his career.
Really?
Just goes to show that sometimes the less we talk, the more we achieve.
Interesting.
And taking that a step further,
Okay.
Carnegie even suggests that we should let the other person feel that the idea is their own.
Wow. That's a subtle art.
It is.
How do you do that?
It's about subtly guiding the conversation
Uh-huh.
so that the other person arrives at the desired conclusion,
Okay.
as if it was their own brilliant idea.
I see.
He uses the example of Colonel Edward House,
Okay.
who is a close advisor to President Woodrow Wilson. And House realized that the most effective way to influence Wilson
Yeah.
was to kind of plant an idea
Uh-huh.
and let it germinate in the president's mind.
So Wilson would think it was his own idea.
Exactly. And then Wilson would own the idea and take pride in its implementation.
That's brilliant.
This is a brilliant strategy.
It is.
And it speaks to the importance of really understanding human psychology.
Right.
But to influence effectively, we need to do more than just steer the conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
What else do we need to do?
We need to understand the other person's perspective.
Okay.
And Carnegie emphasizes this over and over again.
Really?
The importance of honestly trying to see things from the other person's point of view.
Yeah, it's about stepping outside our own biases
Right.
and making a genuine effort to understand their perspective.
It's about cultivating empathy.
Yeah.
And Carnegie illustrates this with a story about a salesman who was struggling to collect an overdue payment.
Okay.
And instead of getting angry,
Uh-huh.
he took the time to listen to the customer's frustrations.
Yeah.
And he ended up not only collecting the payment,
Okay.
but actually strengthening the relationship.
It's amazing how much can be accomplished when we simply take the time to understand where the other person is coming from.
And building on that,
Okay.
Carnegie also emphasizes the importance of being sympathetic to the other person's ideas and desires.
It's true, we all crave sympathy and understanding.
Exactly.
And when we offer it to others, we
Yeah.
create this powerful bond
Yeah.
that makes them more receptive to our ideas.
And Carnegie even suggests that sometimes people will go to great lengths to elicit sympathy from others,
Really?
even to the point of harming themselves.
Wow, that's interesting.
It highlights how deeply ingrained this need for sympathy is in all of us.
So true.
And by recognizing that need in others, we can create a more compassionate and effective approach to communication.
Okay, so we've talked about avoiding arguments,
Right.
understanding perspectives, and
Yeah.
offering sympathy.
Right.
What other gems does Carnegie have for us?
Well, he talks about the power of appealing to nobler motives.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's about framing our requests
Yeah.
in a way that speaks to the other person's desire to do good
Uh-huh.
and make a positive impact.
Okay.
He references J. Pierpont Morgan,
Okay.
who believed that people often have two reasons for doing something.
What are they?
One that sounds good,
Yeah.
and the real reason...
Well, appeal to the one that sounds good.
Exactly, because it taps into our idealism and our desire to be seen as generous and kind.
I see.
And it can be surprisingly effective.
Give me an example.
He uses the example of Lord Northcliffe,
Uh-huh.
who's a successful publisher.
Okay.
And he convinced even famous authors to write for him
How do you do that?
by offering to donate their payment to their favorite charities.
So a win-win.
Brilliant win-win, right?
It is.
It fulfills the author's desire to contribute to a good cause,
Uh-huh.
but it also serves Northcliffe's business goals.
I like it.
And this segues nicely into another key principle.
Okay, what's that?
Dramatizing your ideas.
Okay.
It's about making your ideas come alive.
Uh-huh.
By using vivid language, compelling stories, engaging visuals,
Okay.
it's about capturing people's attention and making your message memorable.
I like it.
He tells a story about a safety director who was struggling to get employees to wear their safety glasses.
Okay.
And instead of just lecturing them,
Yeah.
he brought in a metal worker who had lost an eye in an industrial accident.
That's powerful.
And that first-hand account
Yeah.
was much more powerful than any lecture could ever be.
Absolutely.
It tapped into their emotions
Yeah.
and made the consequences of not wearing safety glasses very real.
It's a reminder that storytelling can be a powerful tool for persuasion.
For sure.
And finally, Carnegie leaves us with a challenge.
A challenge.
Throw down a challenge.
I like it.
He believes that people are often more motivated by challenges than by rewards.
Interesting.
You know, it's about appealing to their desire to prove themselves, to rise to the occasion, to achieve something meaningful. He tells the story of George Bernard Shaw, who was initially terrified of public speaking.
Oh, wow.
But when a friend challenged him to overcome his fear,
Yeah.
he embraced it as a personal mission and went on to become one of the most celebrated speakers of his time.
It's incredible how a simple challenge can spark such a transformation.
It really is.
It speaks to the power of tapping into people's inner drive and helping them discover their potential.
Yeah, and remember, these principles aren't about manipulation or trickery.
Right.
It's about using your understanding of human nature
Yeah.
to build authentic relationships, to communicate effectively, and to inspire others to achieve their best.
You know, we've covered so much ground with all these principles.
It's amazing how relevant they still are today.
It really is.
Yeah.
But there's one area that I'm particularly interested in,
Okay, what's that?
and that's leadership.
Oh, leadership. Okay.
How do we guide and inspire others,
Yeah.
in a way that gets results, but without, causing resentment?
Right, that's the key.
Exactly.
So Carnegie shares this fascinating anecdote about President Calvin Coolidge,
Okay.
who was known for his brevity.
Yeah. Silent Cal.
Right, and so he once surprised his secretary by giving her this rather effusive compliment
About what?
on her appearance.
Oh, okay.
And then, with a touch of humor,
Okay.
he followed it up with a gentle suggestion for improvement.
Oh, that's a great approach.
It is.
It's like softening the blow.
Right.
making the criticism more palatable by
Exactly.
kind of sandwiching it between genuine appreciation.
And this leads us to Carnegie's first principle of leadership.
Okay, let's hear it.
If you must find fault, this is the way to begin.
I like it.
Start with sincere appreciation.
Okay.
Acknowledge the person's good qualities before addressing areas for improvement.
It makes sense.
Yeah,
When you feel valued and respected, you're more likely to be receptive to constructive feedback.
absolutely. Carnegie also tells a story about President William McKinley and one of his supporters who had written this very passionate campaign speech
Uh-huh.
that was completely unsuitable for the occasion.
So McKinley was in a tough spot.
He didn't want to discourage his supporter,
Right.
but he knew he had to guide him in a different direction.
So how'd he handle it?
Well, he handled it brilliantly.
Okay.
He started by praising the speech,
Uh-huh.
acknowledging its strengths,
Okay.
and then he gently steered him
Yeah.
towards writing a more appropriate speech.
That's a master class in diplomacy and leadership.
It is.
He managed to deliver constructive criticism while still preserving the other person's dignity and motivation.
Exactly. And Carnegie also emphasizes the importance of calling attention to mistakes indirectly.
Okay.
It's about finding subtle ways to point out areas for improvement without making the other person feel embarrassed or attacked.
So give me an example.
So instead of saying, you messed this up,
Right.
you might say, I noticed this happen, and I'm wondering if there's a way we could approach it differently next time.
Yeah, I like that approach.
It's about leading by example
Mhm.
and creating an environment where people are encouraged to self-correct.
I see.
He gives this example of this talented young woman who was habitually late.
Okay.
And her boss, instead of reprimanding her directly, subtly highlighted the importance of time
Okay.
by pointing out how her tardiness could affect the whole team and delay crucial projects.
I see.
Yeah, it's a much more effective approach than simply scolding her.
Right.
It encourages her to think about the impact of her actions and to take responsibility.
And building on that idea of shared responsibility,
Yeah.
Carnegie talks about the importance of admitting your own mistakes before criticizing others.
Oh, that's a good one.
It shows humility,
It does.
and it creates a sense of camaraderie.
It's like saying we're all in this together and we all make mistakes.
Right.
Fosters mutual respect and understanding.
And this ties into another key principle,
What's that?
asking questions instead of giving direct orders. It's about empowering people to think for themselves and come up with solutions
Right.
rather than just blindly following instructions.
It shifts the dynamic from, a boss-subordinate relationship
Right.
to a collaborative one.
Exactly.
And Carnegie suggests that even subtle changes in phrasing can make a big difference.
Okay, give me an example.
So instead of saying, do this,
Right.
you might say, do you think this would work?
Yeah.
It empowers the other person and makes them feel like a valued contributor.
It's about leading with inspiration rather than with authority.
Exactly. And it ties into another important
I
concept,
agree.
letting the other person save face.
Yeah.
It's about protecting people's dignity and self-esteem even when they've made a mistake.
It's about understanding that, everyone makes mistakes
Right.
and focusing on solutions rather than assigning blame.
Carnegie believes that publicly humiliating someone or making them feel inferior is never an effective leadership strategy.
Right.
It breeds resentment and damages relationships.
It's about recognizing that everyone has their own unique strengths and challenges and treating each other with respect and compassion.
And speaking of strengths, Carnegie reminds us of the power of praise.
Yeah.
It might seem simple, but it's often overlooked.
Right.
He emphasizes that praise should be sincere and specific, focusing on the particular actions or qualities you want to encourage.
It's about acknowledging people's efforts and achievements
Yeah.
and letting them know that their contributions are valued.
And he tells this very poignant story about a young boy who dreamed of becoming a singer.
Okay.
But his first teacher crushed his dreams by telling him he had no talent.
Ouch.
Yeah. But his mother,
Okay.
despite their poverty, nurtured his passion, offered unwavering support and encouragement.
Wow.
And he went on to become a world-renowned opera singer.
It's a beautiful testament to the power of belief and encouragement.
It is, and it reminds us that our words and actions can have a profound impact on the people around us. Carnegie also talks about the importance of giving the other person a fine reputation to live up to.
Okay.
It's about setting high expectations
Yeah.
and expressing confidence that the person is capable of meeting them.
It's about seeing the best in people and creating an environment where they can thrive.
He tells a story about a teacher who had this particularly challenging student.
Uh,
And instead of focusing on his negative behaviors, she decided to focus on his potential for leadership.
uh,
She told him she was counting on him to be a role model for the other students
yeah.
and treated him accordingly.
And he rose to the occasion.
He did.
It's amazing how our expectations of others can shape their behavior.
If we treat people as if they're capable and trustworthy,
Yeah.
they're more likely to live up to those expectations.
And finally, Carnegie talks about the importance of making the fault seem easy to correct.
Okay.
It's about breaking down complex tasks into smaller, more manageable steps
Right.
and offering encouragement along the way.
He shares a personal anecdote about his experience taking dance lessons.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and his first teacher focused on his mistakes and made him feel discouraged. But his second teacher emphasized his strengths and made the steps seem easy to learn.
What a difference a positive approach makes.
That is.
It's about encouragement and positive reinforcement rather than, criticism and negativity.
Right.
It's about making learning and growth enjoyable.
And lastly, Carnegie highlights the importance of making people glad to do what you want.
Okay.
It's about aligning your requests with the other person's goals and desires,
Right.
creating win-win situations where everyone benefits.
It's about understanding what motivates people and finding creative ways to make work more enjoyable and rewarding.
He gives this example of a manager who was struggling to motivate his team to complete a tedious task.
Okay.
And instead of simply ordering them to do it, he turned it into a competition,
Okay.
offered a reward to the team that finished first. And the task was completed quickly and efficiently, and everyone had fun doing it.
It's such a simple yet effective strategy.
It is.
And it underscores, I think, a key theme that runs throughout Carnegie's work.
What's that?
That understanding human nature is the key to building meaningful relationships, to achieving success, and to living a more fulfilling life.
His insights are timeless and universally applicable, whether you're leading a team, building a business, or simply navigating everyday interactions.
Well, it's been a fascinating deep dive into how to win friends and influence people.
It really has.
And we encourage all of you out there listening to explore this book further.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Pick one principle that really resonates with you and try putting it into practice this week.
That's a great idea.
Observe the results, and you might be surprised by the positive impact it has on your relationships and your life.
Remember, the principles outlined by Carnegie aren't about manipulation or trickery.
Right.
They're about genuine human connection.
Yeah,
Understanding that we all share the same basic needs and desires.
for sure.
We all want to feel appreciated, respected, and valued.
Absolutely.
And when we treat others with that same kindness and understanding,
Yeah,
we create a ripple effect of positivity that can change the world.
couldn't agree more.
So until next time, keep seeking knowledge, keep growing, and keep connecting.
Great advice.